The Woman in the Yard, 2025's latest horror film from Blumhouse Productions, a studio that only makes amazing films, like The Exorcist Believer, Five Nights at Freddy's, and the remake of Black Christmas. Oh wait, people don't really like any of those films? I really don't either. Let me start that part over. Blumhouse Productions only makes amazing films, like Get Out, Hush, Wolfman, Paranormal Activity, and more. Considering all the good and not so good films the production company has made, I wanted to give The Woman in the Yard a shot. After seeing the promotion and trailers, I was baffled that people actually called this movie The Woman in the Yard. And while I thought it was a strange title at first, it did its job at getting my butt in the movie theater. The film's story gets heavier the further in you go, and while there were moments that didn't really blow me away, it definitely forced me to think. With such a simple concept, this movie relies on a small but strong cast, horror tropes, and subtext that tells the real story within. We'll be talking about all of this and more as I welcome you to this week's episode of Studio Cinema Saturday, the show where we review films old and new, the ones you don't like and the ones you do. I'm your host, Kel McCall, and today we're reviewing The Woman in the Yard. To start with some spoiler-free thoughts, I thought this film was okay. The heavy weight of the subject material towards the end of the film was super jarring, although it added a lot of depth and emotion to the film. I would say it's not really a scary film, but it does get pretty disturbing towards the end. The woman definitely has a creep factor to her. The first couple times you see her, anytime she gets closer, and when you see her in the back of shots, she does her job. I feel like I just became desensitized to it very quickly, and I'll explain how I interpreted the ending shortly. But before I spoil it, I'll just say, if you pick up on what's going on with Ramona's character, it's fairly easy to read the end of the film, but they never flat out tell you what's really going on with the woman, which was fine, I got it, but it leaves you wondering if you're right for sure. Now we'll go into spoilers, so if you don't want to know about what lies beneath the cloth of The Woman in the Yard, you may want to click off. But go check out another one of our videos. I want to start by talking about the cast. I thought it was one of the stronger things about this film. The two child actors are amazing. Danielle Deadwyler sells Ramona's emotional journey, while her two kids in the film are played by Peyton Jackson and Estella Cahia, who embody two kids who are scared of the situation. They just really feel like a real struggling family. It's the exposition that allows you to buy into the plot later on. Now I want to talk about all of the horror trope elements you see throughout the film. I liked this aspect of what is totally a genre-based film, but we use so many tropes that this feels like many other horror films I've seen. The characters looking away only to look back and see the danger is closer, the shadow scares, the threat of the film posing as an embodiment of death, characters dealing with hidden trauma, the classic horror slasher-like chase in the climax scene, and more. All of these things attempt to make the horror film scary, and at times it feels like we're just slightly too tropey and it makes the scares predictable. I also felt like the jump scares in the film became very repetitive, and maybe finding out that the woman was just a semi-normal looking woman also killed some of the fear factor to what could have been a really big scare. But really, all of this stuff is only the surface level of the film. The story that we are given at the beginning of the film tells us that Ramona's husband David died prior to the events of the story. Through flashbacks we learn that he died in a car accident. Then you get one of the film's biggest twists. The Woman in the Yard tells Taylor his mother was driving in the incident that killed his father. In this flashback, you learn that Ramona had felt unhappy and unsatisfied by her life with him, the kids, and their new unfinished farm. She tells him all of her time was spent on him, the kids, and the farm, which has taken her time and passion away from being an artist, which is what she truly wanted out of her life. You get sprinkles of these details throughout the intro of the film in moments where Ramona prays for strength, and when her daughter asks her why she doesn't paint anymore. In another twist, during the climax of the film, you learn Ramona was not praying to God for the strength to live, but she was praying for the strength to let go of her family and her own life. And we can now talk about this climax scene some. Ramona convinces her kids to leave her at the farm with the woman in the house now. This is when the woman shows her the lives of her successful kids in a future where Ramona removes herself. This forces our protagonist to give in to the evil forces of our villain. She allows the woman to take her over and put a gun to her head. We then cut to the outside of the house, where the kids have returned and Ramona comes outside, revealing to the audience that she chose to remain a part of her kids' lives. They give the farm a wholesome name and voila, there's your movie. So who is the woman in the yard? Well, we can look at a couple of Ramona's encounters with the woman, who isn't just in the yard the whole film. We see that Ramona sees her for the first time in the film when she prays for the strength to leave her kids. But we know due to the flashbacks later that she saw her in the rearview mirror after telling her husband about her depression, and this may have even caused the wreck that killed him. It seems that the woman comes to Ramona in her darkest moments, and we know from the climax of the film that she wants Ramona to end her depression by ending her life. But a quick moment in the film that is semi-misleading is when Ramona succumbs to the woman. We see this multiple times earlier, which forces Ramona to daydream about killing her children. But in the attic, we see Ramona get taken over and she wakes up as the woman, staring at the house. She then sees her past self walk up to her and begin the interaction from the inciting incident of the story. Yet the woman doesn't look like Ramona during the events of the film. So all of this leads me to my interpretation of the film's ending. The woman in the yard represents Ramona if she were to remove herself from the situation. If not that directly, she definitely represents Ramona's depression and suicidal thoughts. Given she sees her before her husband dies and when she is praying for the strength to let go of her life, I think the woman represents death as a whole as well. I think we see this literally when Ramona becomes the woman who stares at what she calls her beautiful kids from outside of the house as a spectator, almost showing Ramona what it's like to not be a part of her kids' lives. So the woman is Ramona's trauma, her depression, and her idea of death. And while I think this film did a great job at telling the stories of the characters in the film, I think this concept is slightly overused in modern horror. We've seen this in things like Smile, The Babadook, It Follows, and way more. My biggest thing about this kind of film is that it takes these characters that you've set in a very real world, even going as far to show that they live on a secluded farm and have no power. Yet for antagonist's sake, there is an extremely supernatural woman who sits out in your yard haunting your family. It's something that you just have to buy into in order to make sense of the film. So after considering all of these things, I have to give the film a 5.5 out of 10. I give it credit for having an awesome cast who portrayed their characters in a way that made me believe them within the film's story, but I take points away for the film's premise being slightly cheesy, unoriginal, and overdone. Not saying I didn't enjoy the viewing of the film though, and I do appreciate the vulnerability of the filmmakers telling this story. Let me know your thoughts and theories on the woman in the yard in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode of Studio Cinema Saturday, drop a like on it and consider subscribing to the channel. We love to talk about movies with the audience in the comments below. Don't worry, we won't leave you hanging down there. But we have over 50 more episodes of this show we'd love for you to check out. We pair this with our weekly show Television Tuesday, but our main focus here is telling stories of our own. We make short films that live here on the channel where you can see we don't just talk about movies, but we make them too. I hope you check out some of that Studio 24 content, and I'll see you there.